And I was brought here from Toronto because I had some food policy experience, and I also had some experience implementing a lot of these ideas that are in the food strategy. So what the food strategy is, it's called FRESH. It's Edmonton's Food and Urban Agriculture Strategy. And there's sort of two parts of it that I'm going to talk about. One part is the public involvement plan, so the citizen engagement. It's done quite differently than other city projects. And then also sort of the meat and potatoes of the strategy, so the strategic directions. As Elizabeth mentioned, one of them deals with land, but there's another 8 that deal with all aspects of the food system. And if I have time, there's a video about these citizens panels that I'll show, and that'll be a nice segue to Deb's presentation. So the timing is very interesting that we're presenting today because Council is sort of making a decision on this right now as we speak. Last Friday, they took the first step in getting the strategic direction approved by taking it to Executive Committee, which is normally a small subset of Council. However, seeing this as such an important project, all the councillors showed up to hear the speakers. The speakers were done in panels of 18, so we got through 54 speakers last Friday. There's about over 500 people attended, interested people from the public. And councillors also had an opportunity to ask some questions. So after 9 hours, we didn't get through everyone, so they decided to extend it to today. So it's taking place as we speak. I was there this morning, and they had about another 10 people on the panel, and then council will ask them questions, and then ask administration questions. So just so I get an idea of who's here, how many people are outside of Edmonton and don't know the sort of nuts and bolts of the strategy? So most people are from, okay. So I'll sort of go over the public participation in a bit more detail, and I'll try to quickly get through everything. So Elizabeth talked about this a bit, sort of the key milestones. You know, the actual drafting of the strategy has happened quite quickly. It's been over about 8 months. But you know, it did start about 2 or 3 years ago when the city was approving its MDP, Municipal Development Plan, which is known as an official plan in Ontario and other provinces. So there's much public support to include food and agriculture as a chapter of this Municipal Development Plan, and it called for about 3 or 4 things. So one was a food strategy, one was a food council, a food charter, and also some interaction with the regional government here to do with food and agriculture. So that was May of 2010. So then internally, you go through sort of a scoping process. That took place in June of 2010. We had to get some funding for it. So the public launch finally took place in May 2011. There had to be a terms of reference approved and an advisory committee formed. So the advisory committee was formed in November of 2011. Then we had an internal core project team. We've got city staff-wise, we have about 3 or 4 people on it that are full-time food and ag project. We also have a number of external consultants that have been content experts. They've helped with facilitation, partnered with the university, things of that nature. And then internally, once we have a draft strategy together, our sort of normal process is we take it through all the different departments in the city and have them let us know, is this reasonable, is this doable? You know, we're in a policy department, but if we talk about bees and chickens, stuff like that, we need to make sure we talk to the bylaw folks, see what the problems are there. Are they going to need more staff if this stuff moves forward? What are the costs like? So we've done a full technical committee process, and that has helped inform the draft strategy that Council's considering right now. So just a little more detail. So the project launched on May 28th of 2011. We did an initial survey to see where people's sentiments are, you know, what people are interested. You know, food and ag is quite broad. We started taking a food systems perspective and looking at all the aspects of the food system. So we really want to know what was going on, what are the successes, but also what do people want. And this also helped inform the terms of reference for the project. And then also there's a number of follow-up events at farmers markets and various festivals. So it was determined that multiple stakeholders had to be involved in this. So you know, not just government, but food retailers, farmers, producers, landowners, the development community, as Elizabeth mentioned, it was represented. You know, they have a stake in this as well, seeing they own a lot of this land that people want preserved. But as well, you know, cultural institutions, processors, distributors, you know, reached out to educational institutions, community organizations, social welfare and health organizations. It's not an easy task. You know, health here is more of a provincial level. And a lot, you know, there's a lot of provincial stuff, regional stuff. There's stuff that the private sector does, public sector, and you know, community organizations. So we have these multiple stakeholders, and then we had multiple streams of engagement as well. So we had an advisory committee that sort of steered the process. It was a group of about 15 folks. But we also had stakeholder groups that we brought together. These various stakeholders, first we brought them together by market segment, and then we mixed a bunch of different market segments together to see, you know, so that they could hear others' perspectives on what the key opportunities and challenges are. We also did a landowner survey, so everyone that owned a parcel of land in these urban growth areas were sent a survey. We wanted to get an idea of, you know, are you planning on saving this land? Are you interested in preserving it? You know, what are your feelings on food and agriculture? So we did that. We surveyed, I think it was over 2,000 landowners. We did a citizens panel. I'm going to go in more detail about that. So I'll wait until we get to that slide. And we use social media, which is something that cities usually stay clear of, but we were fairly active on Twitter, and we did a city blog, we did a Facebook page, and then we did a lot of the typical stuff like open houses, some more surveys, and asked administration for some feedback. So basically everything I just mentioned became a public involvement plan. So we also have it on display. You can take a look at it afterwards. But on the top line, this advisory committee met over the course of about a year, and they met, I think it was actually 18 times. And this is a group of volunteers. At one point, we were meeting every other week for about 4 or 5 hours. We had them locked in a room, trying to get this strategy together. An idea of what other places are doing, and knew a little bit more about it. We did some specific studies. We did an agriculture inventory and assessment. It's a fairly lengthy document. These are all on our website. And that looked at what is unique characteristics about the farmland and the farm industry in Edmonton, and compared it to the region as well as the province. So we found out a lot of interesting information in that study. And we did a local food opportunities report. So what are the key economic opportunities for local food right here in Edmonton? And then the other information we gathered was more, a little less scientific, but more from the community, so through these stakeholder panels that we had, as well as these citizen panels. And we also had a conference in May, where we attracted over 200 people. We had a number of streams, and you know, you learned about all different aspects of the food system. So this advisory committee, Elizabeth spoke about it a bit, so I'll just quickly go over this, but it had about 15 members. It was a cross-section, so it did, you know, represent many different aspects of the food system, and also it included landowners as well. So the purpose of this group was to sort of steer the process and to provide some guidance for the strategy. So there's about 18 meetings within 11 months, and by the end of it, out of the 15, 11 were willing to sign off. 4 had some reservations about mostly the land use issue, which was one part of it. But for about, I would say about 90% of the strategy, they did see eye to eye, and land use was definitely the sticking point. So the stakeholder meetings, as I mentioned, so we had about 30 different groups represented. So we had food producers, farmers, even advocacy groups, developers, cultural organizations. These were facilitated sessions. There was about 8 of them. And the first time we did it by market segment to get specific information. And then we mixed them all up together. And so we ended up having 120 stakeholders involved, and that provided one of the background document reports that helped inform the advisory committee and helped inform the strategy. So our Food in City conference was another big sort of public launch. The keynote speaker was Wayne Roberts, so he really educated us on what happened in Toronto, and he's very knowledgeable of what's going on around the world. You know, it was a great networking opportunity for foodies. We had a lot of positive feedback on it, and it was great to hear about some of the excellent projects that are already happening in Edmonton. So we had 264 delegates there, and a lot of the people that were engaged at this conference have sort of stuck through to the process and become a lot more involved in the food and ag strategy. Again, social media was a big factor in getting the word out there. These are just a sample of some tweets. I know, I think twice we've trended to one of the top hashtags in Canada during our conference and then during our session last Friday at Council. But it's a good way for the public to just sort of say what's on their mind about food and ag and be candid about it. We had a city blog set up. We ran this for about, I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks. We had a question of the week to get people talking about this, and we found it was another good engagement tool in our communications folks at the city. So it's been one of the most successful blogs, and using it as an example for other projects and other ways of engaging the public. So our public opinion survey, one of the big surveys we did, we just wanted to get a feel of what people thought about these sort of, we had a loose idea of what we're coming together with, and some of these higher level ideas, we wanted to know what the public thought about it. So this was, bees and chickens, local food. Are you willing to pay more for something that's local versus something that's imported? And we got a lot of interesting feedback out of that. We developed a report from it, and we found that people, value or starting to value the quality of their food and the localness of it more than price. Some of the research in the past says, price used to be king, but it seemed that people are willing to pay a bit more if they're supporting their local economy, getting fresher, more nutritious food. So we had quite high response. We had over 2,000 people respond to it. And again, that helps sort of inform the strategy. So the real interesting part of the citizen engagement was the citizens panel, and they call it deliberative democracy. So it's how do you get the non-usual suspects out to engage on a city project? Many city projects, you have an open house, you have some cookies and coffee, and people, similar people come out that are quite involved. But we wanted to hear from people that normally aren't involved. So we partnered with the university on this. It was a 6-week program, but the planning and preparation and recruiting these people, it had about 30 people in the university involved. And it's still ongoing and analyzing the data. Doug will talk about that shortly. So really it was a random selection of about 66 people, and they're broken down into groups of 12. And so for every week they met, they really got in depth about these issues. And the final session, I have a quick video I can show, and they voted on what's important to them. So they had electronic clickers, and they sort of tallied and gave us not just a bunch of ideas, but they prioritized what really matters to them. So again, these people, it was all age groups, all income brackets, all ethnicities, all abilities, and really basic knowledge about food. They weren't the usual suspects. So I have just a quick video that I'll show, and this is the final session, and you'll hear from some of the people that were involved.
We're to the last day, and all the work has been stirring and working and re-looking at things. Our agenda this morning is going to be quite similar from your sessions you've had with your facilitator. We're going to review the preliminary report from last week. Then we'll do a little review of the primer and practices guide about the attractive and unique places. Then we'll generate some strategies, we'll deliberate, and develop arguments for and against. We have 10 strategies, food secure, 8 for economy, 10 for ecosystem, energy, and waste, and we have yet to come up with attractive places. In the polling, we'll come up to 2 to 3 from each of those areas. Then we'll put them all on a slide, and you will select 2 to 4, which are the best of the best.
Sometimes it can be disheartening if you're voting for something that everyone else isn't, but it's important to realize that this isn't just about you, this is about Edmonton and everyone's views.
You know, it's pretty amazing if you stop and think. 1, that you're addressing food and agriculture, and 2, that you're engaging all of you.
Well, I was really impressed that the city actually put the process in place.
Everyone felt really positive that what we're doing is going to make real change and that we're going to really affect what's happening in the city.
There's so much beyond food other than just sort of nourishing your body and fuel for your body.
I got a chance to meet some amazing people who all are very passionate, and our group got into discussions to the point where we couldn't keep to the schedule anymore.
They took to heart the things that their fellow participants talked about. They actually thought about them. Maybe they went out and did a little bit more research themselves. Sometimes they came back and continued to disagree, but had some more perspective on the situation after their conversations. Or sometimes they came back and said, you know what, I really thought about what you said last week, and you've got some really good points. I might have actually changed my mind.
This really is truly the quintessential example of deliberative democracy at work in the city of Edmonton.
We need to understand the feelings of all of the citizens of the city. They're not just doing it from a few small viewpoints that are sitting on that committee or even in council.
Well, the thing that's really beneficial about a process like this and that differentiates it from different forms of public engagement is that unlike a public meeting where somebody comes with a proposal where the citizens just kind of critique it, this is where the citizens come up with a proposal themselves. It's something that's very grassroots. It's very powerful because it empowers the citizens. There's a sense of optimism to it.
Words that stick out for me?
Fantastic to start off with.
Inspiration.
I'm hoping the final outcome will be as positive as my group has been.
The growth that we've as individuals have actually experienced in this process.
It has been very insanely enriching, and I really have enjoyed the process. It's been great.
Enlightening.
Quite interesting and eye-opener, and glad to meet all the citizens from Edmonton.
Well, hopeful, even more hopeful than I imagined. It's easy to sit back and be cynical of policy-making processes or political processes, and this really buoys my hope in the process and the hope of citizens as actively engaged in the civic process.
One of the big next steps is, as I said, we form this integration committee, so we have 11 of the panelists from all of the different subgroups that we're going to have a number of meetings with, so it's really going back through all the raw data. We'll be pulling out some examples and some ideas and strengthening them and putting them into a report that's readable and vibrant and capture some of the process, so that's going to be the next big steps. And doing a lot of evaluation and dissemination, so letting people know about the panel, what worked, what didn't. It was an incredible process. Nothing is ever a perfect process, so I think you always want to keep learning.
Next step for me as a researcher are to analyze the data that we generated through surveys and develop comprehensive evaluation.
It's important to have the Centre for Public Involvement because they have the research background, the academic background, the knowledge of how to run an effective public involvement process such as this. We don't have quite that same knowledge in the city.
It builds capacity for us to engage citizens better. And we can continue to build that capacity, not only within the city, but with citizens. When citizens start to see that pattern of engagement looks more like this, then I think what will happen is more and more citizens will start to see that the city is taking their views seriously, and they'll come forward and contribute to initiatives that affect everybody.
Since we started, I went and I spoke to some of my neighbors, and as a matter of fact, one neighbor said, well, I would like to put in a garden. I said, well, I will come and plow your garden for you, which I did last weekend. because I've been so fired up by what I've seen happening this week. As I said, there are great potentials to be tapped.
I'll just quickly go over the sort of meat and potatoes of the strategy, which are the strategic directions. So basically, there's 9 strategic directions in the food and agriculture strategy, and under each strategic direction is about, in total, 40 recommendations. So the first one has to do with setting up an Edmonton Food Council. There's been a lot of support for this. Typically, the Food Council is set up first, then you do a strategy, but it didn't happen that way here. So they would largely be charged with the implementation of some of this, not all of it, but some of it. The next strategic direction had to do with food skills and food information. So this could be mapping Edmonton's food system, its agricultural assets, we've heard from a lot of people they want a one-stop shop for information on this stuff. It could be a web portal, some buy local campaigns, some mentorship programs, just basic food skills. The third strategic direction had to do with urban agriculture, so identifying opportunities for Edmonton, also looking at some more innovative ways of growing urban agriculture in possibly small spaces. And this also covers beekeeping and backyard hens. They're a big issue here. A lot of people interested in it, and the city is willing to explore a pilot or whatever going forward with that. Developing local food infrastructure and capacity. So this is a bit larger scale. This could be a food hub, sort of an agri-food hub. We've already talked with partners like Northlands, which is a large agri-food society here, and they may be interested in stuff like that, but also smaller scale food hubs. Grow local food supply and demand. So having a supply, having adequate supply of local food is sometimes the problem. There seems to be a lot of demand for it right now. Just this year, farmers markets have strengthened quite a bit. The 104th Street Market here is celebrated one of the top markets in Canada now. They've got over 150 vendors. They get thousands of people every week. And also stuff like a local food identification system. So, a grown in Edmonton sticker on some food that's actually grown in Edmonton. The sixth has to do with public space and enlivening the public realm through food activities. So this is food festivals, but it could also be healthy food in convenience stores. Food trucks has a strong movement here as well. And another issue is with sidewalk patios. There's a lot of hurdles that restaurants have to go through to get a sidewalk patio and try to enliven the street a bit. So we would hope to be able to make that easier. Number 7 has to do with food waste. Edmonton has one of the largest composting facility in North America. They're getting close to diversion rates of 90% for their waste. All garbage is sorted here, no matter what bin you put it in. But there's also stuff, we could reduce the amount of stuff that gets thrown away, reduce packaging before it becomes waste. Number 8 has to do with ecological farming approaches. And I'll just hop over this because I'm out of time. Number 9 has to do with integrating land for agriculture. So the group had the most disagreement about this. So what they offered was a framework and a bunch of mechanisms and values. So they did offer, what are the options, and they decided that council and elected officials need to make these decisions about land, not this advisory committee. So I'll wrap it up there. I'll pass it over to Deb, and thank you for listening.